Hey everybody, this is the Inside Handoff Football Podcast, episode 3. And boy, do
Hey,
we have not a lot to talk about this week because it's it's been a pretty slow news week in the NFL, and well, I mean that's gonna happen sometimes. So we're probably not gonna be here for as long as you've grown accustomed to because we can ramble about a lot of things, but you know we can only ramble about things that actually occur. I am, of course, your host, Johnny V, and it is truly a pleasure to be here with you guys as we inch ever closer towards week 1 and the start of this NFL season. And, of course, joining me, as always, my friends and colleagues. Jer, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic considering we are recording this at 1:47 in the morning. If you checked our Twitter account, you have already noticed it was me who called out Zach for postponing this podcast an hour because he wanted McDonald's. Football over food, hashtag football over food. But we're
No,
here and we're recording.
it was work plus food.
I don't know. Work had us pushed back to 12:30, and then food had us pushed back to 1:45. So I don't know, man. That's a
No,
It's a lot of McDicks for an hour to make it need it. But I digress. Zach, how you doing?
well, you guys basically just said how I'm doing. Not hungry anymore. How about
I'm jealous.
that?
That's always an important thing after eating food at McDonald's. I mean, we could get into that, but let's not. Let's move on to let's break the huddle. And this is going to be a quick huddle because, well, not a lot to really talk about this week. There's a few uh, notes of consequence, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, it has been a very, very slow news week.
You know how slow this week is? We're covering a trade where two guys are probably going to be cut. Come on.
I don't want to. I think one of them will make it.
Okay, but still, it's very inconsequential.
Yeah, there's definitely not too many. I mean, there's one All Pro we're going to be talking about, and the rest are all
Not so pro.
barely
They're
pro.
they're ICO pro.
Oh Jesus! If you get that reference, you're amazing. If you don't, Google it.
I don't.
All right, let's jump right in here. Obviously, this is the main news topic of the weekend. It is a pretty big deal. Over the span of 36 hours, they went from we're not discussing a negotiation, we're not going to negotiate, we're not going to extend, to we're going to in fact make you the highest paid player at your position. In 48 hours, you went from you're going to get franchise tag to here's your super extension. Jamal Adams signed a 4-year extension worth $70 million. Again, further showing the disparity between positions that we talked a lot about last week. That's the highest paid safety in the NFL. $70 million. Um, yeah, who wants to tackle that one first?
I'm. I lot for safety. Um, I have no problem with the contract. Seattle 1 is kind of forced at this point. You traded 2 firsts. That would be where I'd have the problem is I wouldn't have traded 2 firsts for a safety that's about to get paid. But they did. But I like Jamal Adams. You had to pay him. The contract isn't terrible. I think who knows what else. I don't really know what Seattle's plans are. But when it comes to the contract itself, I do not think that's a terrible contract. The salary cap's just going to keep going up. If he's the same caliber of player that he is now in 2 years, we're going to look at this contract and we'll see if like 3, 4, 5 other names ahead of him with the salary cap up, and no one will be thinking anything of this. No one will be talking about it anymore because there'll be 20 to 30 more new NFL contracts that we're all going to be like, oh my God, does he deserve that money? So, like, really, when it comes to these contracts, I think the guy, like, I'm more glad he took the deal and didn't just, like, fight. You know what I mean? For tooth and nail for I don't know what he could have got, maybe another million or two, if that. But like, I'm glad he signed the deal. I'm glad Seattle didn't mess around because if they let him leave, I'm pretty sure Russ was gone. And that could be for another day if we want to talk about that. But like, yeah, I think the deal had to get done all around, and I don't think he got a ridiculous number.
Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he was a major part of Seattle's defense last year. I mean, they really came on in the second half of the year, and he was a big reason for that. I mean, he set an NFL record last year with the most sacks by a defensive back with 9.5. So, I mean, if you're going to pay the guy, you're going to pay him what he's worth, and I think he's the kind of player who is going to end up, when we look back, we're going to look at that contract and think, okay, Seattle might have even underpaid him because he's that good and he's the anchor for that defense right now. And another thing is he was banged up near the end of the year last year and he had off-season surgery. So I think a fresh, healthy Jamal Adams with a new contract coming into this year, something to look out for. And I mean, Zach mentioned the 2 first-round picks. I mean, you never want to give up 2 first-round picks, but I mean, if you're going to do it, he's probably a guy you'd want to do it for. And I mean, what are the Jets going to do with first-round picks?
They're going to squander them because they're the Jets. That's what they do. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, is he a great player at his position? Yes. Did he play like that last year? No. I mean, heading into the 2021 season, he is ranked by PFF as the 10th best safety in the NFL. And, I mean, I know that obviously, injuries and things like that play a factor to that. Obviously, he's still ranked higher than Tyrann Mathieu, who's also looking at this extension as sort of a benchmark for what he can get. But safety is a really tough position. I mean, it's probably right up there with running backs is probably the most meat grindery position in football. In just how fast they kind of churn through them. I mean, the average lifespan for a top-level safety is maybe 5 years. And then they either move to a DB position or they just kind of disappear. There are very few long-term guys. If you last for more than 5 years as a starting safety in the NFL, you're probably destined for Canton. I think it is probably
and get paid when you can, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's
same with the running backs.
Exactly. And I mean, so I don't grudge this choice. I mean, Seattle they literally had to do that. You can't throw out 2 first-round picks and then be like, well, the guy's actually only worth like $40 million. And then all of a sudden your fan base looks at you like, really? You think that's worth 2 first-round picks? And, of course, you got Russ on the other side of the ball who is, just watching the team disappear around him. I mean, when he came in and, made his rise, that team was a brick shithouse. It was... You couldn't,
Or a shit brick house.
You couldn't swing a newspaper in the locker room without hitting an all-pro caliber player. Now...
So, I got a question for both of you.
Yep.
Where, if you're Seattle now, because you've basically, like, your money is, like, locked in from basically every way. How do you improve going forward? What is your... let me try to think of this. Do you go all in? Do you hit trade deadline? Like, do you currently think this team is good enough as assembled? Like, they lost Shaq Griffin, so, like, the cornerback position is questionable. Their O-line has, as we could see by the Russ rumors that he was going to get traded in the offseason, and that was the key reason for said rumors, was the inability of the front office to address that need on the O-line. Where do you go? Because, like, you just paid a guy on, like we all said, it had to happen. Like, I'm not saying they made the wrong decision, but that's money that could have went to a tackle. You know what I mean? That's legit money that now you are not going to put towards that O-line once again. Going forward, how do you try to become a much better team because paying Jamal doesn't make you a better team. Trading for Jamal made you a better team. You already had Jamal on your team. Now you just ate him. How do you get better now that you made that decision? Like you're in, it's done. You know what I mean? There's no other way about it. You can't be like, oh, we made a bad trade and we signed, but at least we got this superstar left tackle.
Mhm.
What do you got? Like, where do you go from it?
I
What's
mean,
your guys' opinion?
I think you kind of have to take almost the Bill Belichick approach to it. In that he sort of finds the cast-offs, and revitalizes them and brings them back and makes them into something again. That's something that Bill is just immensely amazing at. He gives guys second chances and makes them better than they've been in so long that they kind of have to do that. I mean, Pete's a great coach, but that team needs to. I mean, I don't want to say because it sounds so derogative, but they need to dumpster dive a little bit. They're not in a good. They're not in a very good cap position. I don't think they don't have a whole lot in the way of cap space, and they have not done very well managing their draft assets. I mean, they have an extreme tendency of trading away their high-level draft picks, as best I can recall. I don't think they've had too many in the last few years, so it just they it's hard for them to go out and trade because they've done it in such a weird way. Like when they built the Legion of Boom, they did it sort of that way. They brought in some people who were cast-offs and guys that they brought out of, I don't want to say obscurity, but from deep in the draft to make them big. I mean, there were very few members of that core Legion of Boom offense that were picked in the first 2 rounds, I think. I think they were
Mm-hmm.
all later picks that they cultivated into seeing what they could become. That's kind of what they have to do because they don't, that they have to go back to that mentality of making stars from later round picks that people aren't looking at. Because that's where you make success. But I mean that's a league wide issue, not just specific to them. But that's something that they kind of stopped doing a little bit. They started focusing more on, I almost want to say more on the story than the talent. There were a few picks they made that were more so made to try and placate people and go for the feel good story of, well, we picked this guy when it long term does not have the kind of effect that you both want and need from a team that, until this point had been the cream of their division. Now, they've got 3, 4 teams in that division that are legitimate contenders to not just win the division but have a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think like Zach's right. Like, I mean, you dump all this money into one player, and like Zach said, I mean, the offensive line needs help. I mean, Russ was running for his life out there last year, and to the point where it was a joke. I mean, you would watch a Seattle game, and you would expect to see Russ in the pocket, having to run the second he snaps the ball. And I think they need, like, the defense is fantastic right now. So I think this is a way of kind of shoring that up. And then, okay, we've got the defensive pieces in place. Our defense is really good. We don't need to worry about that anymore. We can kind of leave that alone. We can turn our focus to the offense now and kind of decide, okay, we have a run game. We've got pass catchers on the outside. Do we need to look at the O-line? Kind of, they can put more focus on the offense now that they've got the defense shored up and everything is good to go there. Everybody's healthy, which was a major concern last year. And I think that's what this move is kind of focused on now. So they can leave the defense alone and just focus on fixing the offense, which they need.
I think you guys are both right with that. So to double down on this kind of topic, if they don't do these things and they don't address what we all see as a glaring hole, do you think we see a lot of what we've seen with Aaron Rodgers this offseason, next offseason with Russ?
I think Russ definitely puts more pressure, probably to the level of Aaron Rodgers, if we don't see enough moves being made to give him even more playmakers that he could use, give him a better offensive line, protect your quarterback and emphasize his strengths by putting guys around him that are going to make him better. That's the whole point. Russ is a fantastic quarterback, top 5 quarterback, but he can't be that top 5 quarterback if you don't put things around him that accentuate his positives. And I think now it's put up or shut up time for the management in Seattle to kind of show Russ a little love and give him the pieces he needs to excel to where, they're a playoff team again. And not only a playoff team, but a deep run playoff team, because they're in a tough division. So even them winning the division is huge going forward. And if they don't do it this year, then maybe more changes need to be made. And Russ might be the one to, kickstart that change.
That's like, to go off on everything. Like, I think I will go off what you guys, and then especially what you just said. Like, I think like they might have just, they're gonna try their best, and I think they're gonna do exactly what you guys did. So they're saying, I'm hoping, anyways. But I think they might have missed their window. I'm think Russ is looking at stuff, and he's like, if they didn't draft guys like Rashad Penny, you know what I mean? To make these like bad decisions on certain picks and got the right guy, like even in years that they drafted O-line, they missed on a guy. They could have got, a legit dude and got one that isn't good. And I think he sees KC and he's like, that could have been us. And I don't mean how they run it, Tyreek Hill, even though they got DK, who's really fast. But I mean in the sense that they could have had an offensive powerhouse if it, like you were saying, Jer, if they addressed, that stuff. And I think he's now nervous, like, it just might not be able to happen. Like, you got to make a lot of work. Like Johnny said, you got to like dumpster dive, for lack of a better term. You got to hope a lot of these dots connect for things to work out. And not only do you have to hope those connect, you have to hope that other teams don't have theirs, because they're not in this going into this season, as like a top 3 team in the league, and we're like, well, these are just their problems, like these are their holes, but like they're still
good. They're good despite their problems, 10th right?
Best.
Yeah,
they very well could be like the 10th best team in the league, and they might not be getting much better. I don't know, but I don't know. I think we might have spent enough. I just wanted to see your guys' opinions on that. I kind of thought of it.
No, I think you guys you both brought up some really great points. I think they've probably passed the window just because they didn't do enough when they had the opportunities. Like they've drafted some guys great. Like DK, I'd kill to have DK in Green Bay. I'd have killed to have made that pick, but it just, they haven't found a running game that works. And that struggles is huge, and the O-line is just hot garbage, which is one thing I'll say Green Bay has done really well, is kept an O-line that has allowed Rodgers to still, perform at that MVP caliber level without, having to run a track meet every week to try and stay alive.
Yeah,
I feel like almost every great team that had a great quarterback realized that needed to be dealt with, and it's sad that Russ might have his whole career with it not ever addressed.
Well, like Andrew Luck, right?
There
were needs
that's the saddest you can see it. That's like worst case scenario, forcing a Hall of Famer to retire in the prime of his career because you just couldn't. And they did it. They did too. They just did it too late. Mm-hmm. Look how good that O-line is now.
Yep.
Look how important. Like, it's just, it's sad to see. If Sam Darnold turns out to be a stud in Carolina, we're gonna look at the Jets and be like, "You guys are idiots too." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Address your O-line, man. Stop pretending that you need to go get things like running backs and cornerbacks. Like, you have your franchise quarterback. Protect the guy. Your number one goal is to protect the guy. Well, to be determined. At this point in time, it's exciting. Keldar's got a heck of a pick. I'm glad I stopped saying it that way. A heck of a pick with Jamar Chase. But if the Bengals could very well cost Joe Burrow stardom, a career, and I don't mean just by him getting hurt. He just may never be that guy. You know what I mean? Because they want to address something they clearly like. There was a guy there. Penei Sewell was there. There was an answer. It's not so pretty. It doesn't sell you as many jerseys,
Yeah.
but like there was an answer and they ignored it. And it's to be determined if that's gonna hurt them a lot in the future. But in the past, it's hurt them. It's
I
hurt
don't
them
like
a
that
lot.
conversation. We should not talk about that. Joe Burrow is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that
Hey
because
man,
I'm a guy who
I'm
has.
cheering for him.
I'm not saying that because I'm a guy who's got Joe Burrow as my starting quarterback or anything. No.
I know.
No, I mean, you guys were there with me on draft night. We were in a call similar to this one, without video, obviously, and I was lamenting the lack of the Penei Sewell pick. I wanted it. I wanted it so bad I could taste it, but no, they didn't do it. And we'll see if it works out for them or not. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Since that one actually went longer than I expected it to, we can be a bit more shorter on some of these other topics that don't really require too much conversation. But this one does sort of have a bit of conversation to it, and the Giants are open to negotiating a Saquon extension in season. Like, I mean, I don't understand this from a team perspective. Like, a player being open to negotiate this, I understand, because let's be real, the player's focus isn't on the contract in a sense other than just picking up a phone and talking to his agent. He's not focusing on that. Him and the agent have sat down a long time and a lot. They know what they want and they know how, they know what their numbers are going into it to a certain degree. Whereas, team management, that's putting a lot of focus on something that I don't necessarily say it doesn't deserve the topic, but in season, is that really where you want your management focused?
Here's the thing. I agree with you. In the history of football, in most cases, you're right because it's just a safer bet. Like it's just why would you pay a guy when you don't need to pay a guy? You know what I mean? It kind of just makes sense. But I genuinely think, and from lots of what I heard, the amount of the salary cap is going to go up over the next 2 to 5 years on a year-to-year basis is going to be like a climb that the league has never seen in that kind of, you know what I mean, a short period of time. And I think teams are seeing, like, for the same reason why Jerry Jones was like, let's just get Dak done. He saw that new TV deal come in and he's like, oh yeah, I don't even care anymore. Give Dak the money. Because if we don't give Dak the money, the dude's going to get 15 more per year in 2 years. Just give him the money.
Yeah, you don't want somebody else to give him the money.
Like, it's going to happen. Like, I think that's where a lot of teams would say with the Jamal. I think teams are at this point, like, let's just pay guys. If we think he's going to be good, like, let's just pay him. Because in 2-3 years, when people are getting paid, like, we're going to look at these contracts and be like, yo, we got some steals here. And to be honest, we might just get more Xavier Howard situations, though, where he's like, I don't like that these guys are getting paid more than me. And, look for that. I genuinely expect to see a lot of those because I don't think the players quite know how much the salary cap is going to go up in the next, 2 to 5 years. Because that TV deal, from any person that has seen the numbers and that stuff, it's all jaw dropping. They are astonished. They just believe there's going to be a lot of money thrown around in the NFL.
And I think that's a good point because Saquon in season, I don't know if he can stay healthy long enough to sign an extension. I mean, they might have to wheel him up to the table. I mean, he's played 15 games since the start of 2019, and he's not putting up good numbers in those games. So I think the Giants are – there's two options. Do the Giants play it safe and wait and hope that Saquon puts up another, mediocre year, not stud-like numbers? He put up 1,500 yards since 2019 in the 15 games that he's played. Good, but not great. And I think the Giants would be smart to wait. Now, here's the catch. If they do wait and Saquon puts up an absolute phenomenal year, he's going to come to the table next offseason and say, all right, you waited long enough. Now you really got to pay me because I just showed you last year what I can do. Because he hasn't really exceeded his expectations from his rookie year, which were phenomenal numbers. And if he can do that again this year, the Giants might, have to bite the bullet and sign him to a big money deal based on the fact that, hey, Saquon is back to play. Or do they risk it and wait and see if he can play a full season again? Because so far he hasn't shown that he can.
And Daniel Jones is a big key to this too for multiple reasons. Like, one, if Saquon kills it this year, do you want to pay Daniel Jones, who might say Daniel Jones has a good year, pay Daniel Jones as well, only, and then not pay Saquon and assume Daniel Jones is going to put up the same production without a star weapon? Or, say Saquon has a great year, like I was saying, and Daniel Jones has a bad year. Do you want the rookie that's going to replace Daniel Jones to be without Saquon? So do you really want to be put in that situation where Saquon has all, if he has a great year, like Jared did it, like it's all him. He has all the power because they cannot risk that man leaving. Now, it's the safe way, like in the history, like we've all mentioned, the safe way would just play it out. But like if he has a great year, dude might get like $20 million at the running back position.
Yeah, and that's a big if,
great. Especially if he shows like the receiving ability again and stuff. Like, New York's a different monster than Carolina. Christian McCaffrey got money, but the Giants are different. If you're a general manager and Saquon has a great year, say Giants compete, maybe they don't win the division, but they compete for it, and then you don't pay that man, and then you're bad the next year, you're fired, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the New York media wouldn't tolerate it. He would
not a chance. Not a chance. Yeah. There's not a chance. There's Saquon. You have to give Saquon every dollar if he kills it. So you might as well try to see if you can, like Jared said, use the evidence against him. Maybe bargain with him, be like, you haven't stayed healthy. Like we're willing to pay you. Like we're gonna give you good money. Just we're not gonna break the bank for you. We're not gonna go crazy money. $2-3 million over the next highest guy who's ever got it. We understand your potential, but work with us here because we'll give you haven't stayed healthy too. So it's we're meeting in the middle here. I think that's a lot better idea than risking this man chasing $20 million a year.
I think you guys you've got some excellent points to the table. Obviously, hugely, it's a double-edged sword. If you go out there and you sign Saquon to this extension in season and you pay him on the premise of, this is it, the bounce back is real, he's going to, he's going to, for lack of a better term, he's going to AP this ACL. He's going to come back and be the guy he was before and be just as good, if not better. But, again, we're back in that issue that we discussed in extreme depth last week. When he gets hurt, or if he gets hurt, then, you're screwed. Because suddenly, he goes from being that guy to, now this is 2 years in a row, he's been rocky, he's been rough, and here we are invested a boatload in this guy who is made out of glass. It's a risk, and obviously, as a fantasy GM, I'm sitting on Saquon. He's my running back one, and I want him to AP this, come back and be the greatest thing since sliced bread, because, yes, I'm in a fortunate situation that I now, thanks to the guy above me here, have, Alvin Kamara sitting there, so I'm not too hurt at the RB1 position, but, it's one of those things that you don't want to see the contract signed too soon, but you don't want to see it signed too late either. And obviously, I understand, Saquon's camp not wanting to do anything right now because you don't know. You don't know. If you sign a contract now, it's on the what if principle, and you're probably going to leave money on the table that you as a player don't want to leave on the table, whereas management would rather you leave it on the. It's a double-edged sword that no matter how you slice it. I mean, you guys brought up the New York media. No matter how this goes, somebody's getting chewed up and spit out. When this contract gets signed, whenever it gets signed, the back page of the New York Post is going to have something about this. Either they underpaid him or they overpaid him. And it's either his fault or it's management's fault. They're going to lampoon somebody because that's just what the back page of the New York Post does. And we'll just have to wait and see long term whether it's a good thing or a bad thing and who wins, who loses. That's the beauty of the NFL. You never know that right away. Who wins, who loses takes a couple seasons to figure that out, no matter what it is.
Well, it usually takes 60 minutes. That's how long a game is.
Yes, that is very true.
We deal with this a lot. Have fun.
It's true.
So is it time for the biggest news of the night? That the one that's gonna make everyone, they're gonna be so surprised.
You had me confused for a second. I kind of looked at the notes and I was like, wait, what? What are we? Oh, yes. We're now into the segment of news that is likely to get sort of brushed over because, really, who gives a rat's tuchus? The Saints, despite their issues with Michael Thomas, have signed Kevin White. There you go. They broke the bank. I don't have no idea how much they're paying him. Assume very little because he has turned into someone not good.
So disappointing. So disappointing.
He's an injury liability.
That dude might have. They're talking about drafting him above Amari Cooper. It's so sad. The injuries just killed him.
He had so much potential coming into the league, and it sucks. And then when he was able to play, he was catching balls from Mitch Trubisky.
I was gonna say how much of his story is wasted because of where he landed.
Exactly.
And last year, he was looking apparently pretty good, but he was buried in the depth in San Francisco, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure that's where he was.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. It sort of brings us to our next guy who can't seem to stay healthy despite trying to crack, the top position of Russ. Alan Hearns is set to go to the IR. And obviously, they're working with, sort of pandemic-based IR again this year where you only have to sit out 4 games and then you can come back. No limit on how many that can happen with. So, obviously, that's not as big a deal as it is in years past. But, he's going to miss a minimum of 4 games. And this certainly hurts his chances to make the roster.
Do you remember when it looked like Jacksonville just got steals all over the place with Allen Robinson and Alan Hearns and Blake Bortles?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that went bad real quick.
Yeah, man, for that one season, it was phenomenal.
Yes, they
were. And the one they wanted to keep was Blake Bortles. They were like, "Yeah, Allen Robinson, you can go."
Yeah.
What?
Bet on the wrong horse there.
Freezing cold face.
Broncos going to do the same thing here.
Or we're going to shuffle the notes, move the next one down to the bottom because we'll probably actually get a few minutes of topic on this one. So we'll get put out the rest of the. I don't want to say trash because that's completely demeaning to the players, but the.
Good thing they won't see it.
The stuff that's the stuff that's paragraphed in the also happened this week in the news category. The Packers traded away cornerback Josh Jackson in exchange for cornerback Isaac Yankem from the New York Giants.
I'm pretty sure Isaac Yankem, did he not play for the Broncos?
Yes, he did. He was drafted by the Broncos.
I'm just before we go too far on this, I'm gonna say
he graduated dentistry school.
I'm gonna say his name is actually Isaac Yadam. I have no idea how the exact pronunciation of it. IADOM.
We apologize if you happen to see this.
And tell us how to pronounce your name because I have no idea, and I don't think I've ever heard an announcer say it before, and probably won't. Again.
But yeah, he didn't play well for us, so.
No.
I mean,
he's aggressive.
Mostly, this one made the topics because I wanted to make that Isaac Yankem joke for Jer.
Yep.
But I mean, as a Packers fan, I don't know how I feel about this because I actually like Josh Jackson. Not just because he starred in Dawson's Creek and Fringe, and those were really good shows, and of course the Mighty Ducks. How could we forget about the Mighty Ducks?
Josh Jackson from Iowa, right? That's where he came from.
I think so.
Good question.
I mean, I'd actually have to
I
look
think
that up, and that's more work than I've ever done into Josh Jackson in his career since the Packers picked him up.
well, and you can't miss him that much.
No, I mean,
Well,
I
he
liked him. I thought he was somebody that was good for depth, and he just didn't break out the way I wanted him to. And now here he is going to the Giants for another DB. I mean, we've drafted well in those
Basically, dynasty
positions.
situation.
We've drafted well in DB and safety in the last 5 or 6 years, which is a compliment I'll actually give management. One of the few I'll give
Yeah,
them.
King did great for you guys. King killed it.
You know,
I'm sure the Bucks are like, yo, that was the best pick Green Bay's ever had.
need to be fair. Jackson was so good after the preseason opener against the Texans. He was already getting passed by players on the following depth chart. So, I mean, are they really missing much on this trade? Nah, I don't think so.
all right, let's move on to the next also happened trade.
That's Green Bay before. Sorry, cutting you off, Johnny. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You enjoy it when you can mock somebody else's team. All right, moving on to the other also made a trade, but this one actually sort of benefits one of the teams. And the Dolphins are boosting their offensive line by acquiring Greg Little from the Panthers for a 7th-round pick. Um, yeah, anybody want to?
I think this is more of a roster
my
cut.
audio, so I didn't hear any of what you just said in the last 40 seconds or something.
Greg Little to the Dolphins for a 7th-round pick. The offensive lineman, Greg Little.
He was supposed to be such a good prospect, and I don't mean when he got drafted, because I'm pretty sure he was drafted pretty low. But coming out of high school to college, that dude was supposed to be a monster. Like, everyone loved that guy. I don't know what happened with that one, but I think it's always, if we're going to talk about the trade, though, I'll talk about the trade instead of him. I think it's always a good, if you, like, what they trade, like 7th or something,
Yep.
Was it? I'm
Yep.
sorry, you cut it. Exactly. If you can get a young tackle for a 7th, it's a good trade. It's a 7th-round pick. The likelihood of that ever turning into anything, and you're not likely to get a tackle in the 7th round. So if you can get a tackle that was drafted earlier in a draft for a 7th-round pick, maybe you can coach something out of them. Depth at the O-line position definitely never hurts, especially not at the tackle position. So, good trade.
I think the Panthers were probably going to cut him anyways. And him playing in the preseason led to teams inquiring about him. And hey, here's fresh footage on the guy. And I guess the Dolphins liked what they saw. And, the Panthers get a pick out of it. And the Dolphins have a guy they can hopefully, do something with. And, both teams got what they wanted out of it.
Speaking of O-line and young player, though, did you see apparently that rugby player, the left tackle, that was used to be a rugby player a few years ago? He's going to be starting for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Really?
I know we didn't write this down, but yes, I saw this.
I mean,
Jordan Malata or something, I think his name is. I forget it, to be honest. I should have wrote it down.
rugby players have definitely been making a bigger impact in the NFL in the last 5 or 6 years. It used to be sort of like the novelty thing. This guy he's a big rugby player, so let's bring him and see how he does in the NFL. And it usually didn't work out. Whereas now they're actually making progress at it. It's the novelty of it. I mean, it's sort of it kind of harkens back to me, sort of back to the olden days and of yore and like the 70s when the soccer player would come over as the kicker. Because it's crazy and that's never gonna work. And then football has transitioned now to a soccer style of kick. Instead of the traditional toe kick of the 50s and 60s. Now we're in full soccer style kicks. So it works out. If you can find players who fit the profile for the position you want, and that's the important thing, finding the position they work at. And I think offensive line makes a lot of sense because it does translate well to the rugby style. I mean, especially in the scrums and things like that, where you are kind of pushing and jockeying for position and keeping people still. I guess is the best way to put it. So
I mean, I support him getting a chance. His favorite movie is his Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I mean, you got to support a guy like that.
we have entirely lost Zach, as evidenced by the fact that I am now appearing in double vision.
Oh,
Um, that's
he's
an
back.
oopsie. There we go. We got Zach back. We had double vision of me for a second there. It was awkward.
Yeah. Well, one of you is more than enough.
One of me
I'm
is
having some
more than enough.
technical issues over here. Am I good now? Am I back?
You
Yes.
you are back. Thankfully, we're starting to power forward.
Okay.
Let's just keep rocking and rolling here and power through. Um,
Isn't that a hockey thing? Power forward?
that's a basketball thing.
Ah.
The Giants cut Alfred Morris.
The Giants had Alfred Morris.
I
I'm
mean,
so
yeah, really, there you
sorry.
go. I mean, they had to make
Like,
roster cuts. He's been around long enough.
I just had to. I literally just looked up a while. I was like, "What team is C.J. Anderson on?" And then I just found out he retired apparently. So like, it's hard to keep up with. Once running backs get to 30 and they're not stars, like, dude, what's going on with Sean McCoy? Like, does anyone
Yeah.
even know? You
Is
know,
he still
Le'Veon
on the
Bell's supposed to be
Chiefs?
in the
Maybe,
same situation.
like they just bounce around, and I mean, they're good hands, but I don't think they reach a point where they're not valuable enough to take up a roster spot, especially when it's nut cutting time in the next 2-3 weeks, and
And they ask for more money than like you got to start like it's I get it's not fair, man, but like if like there was it was a few years ago I seen Chris Johnson on Good Morning Football, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I have offers to play like da 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 da. I'm just they're not offering me what I want, so I'm gonna wait for what I want because I know what I'm worth." Like I'm essentially paraphrasing, and the guy never played football again. What were you worth? $0? Like, take a contract. You're going to be a third string running back, not doing anything. Why would you not get paid to do that?
yeah, you can
I
you
don't
can pay
understand.
me a wage to hold a clipboard, right?
I mean, that's the
Like,
point I guess I'm trying to make is those that they signed the contract, they had the contract, and he knew his role, and the team is cutting him. Like, is he fallen that far that he can't even be a third string running back? Because I mean,
he might find a job somewhere else, maybe. Tony Pollard, I think, is. I like Tony Pollard, but that's just me.
I mean, it's weird for me that the Giants are doing this. Like, obviously they're more.
Oh, Giants. Shoot. I thought you said Cowboys. I'm stupid. I'm sorry.
No, but I mean that's the
He's
point. Like,
been around.
yeah, he was with the Cowboys before this because he took over for Zeke when Zeke had the suspension year. But um, it's for me it's awkward for the Giants just because you're not 100% sure of Saquon, and his status, and you're sending away Alfred Morris, who, yeah, okay, he's not going to churn the yards he used to, but you know what you're getting. You're leaving that offense in the hands of what Devontae Booker if something happens to Saquon, and there's nobody behind him, really. I mean, what, Corey Clement?
Don't you sleep on Devontae
I'm not
Booker.
sleeping on Devontae. I'm saying, and he's good as a second string guy. I got no problem with that. I'm saying, like, if something happens to Saquon,
Yeah,
that's it. He's your number one guy, and he's not a bell cow guy. He needs somebody with him.
who's a guy do you
Something
trust to
happened
lead the
Saquon,
offense?
Giants.
It's awkward to me that they're doing it this early in training camp, I guess. Like, if you get to and I mean, I can understand that to a certain degree if you know he's not going to make the final roster and you cut him in that sense of, here's a chance, find another spot. If you can find another spot, great. Type thing. And maybe they'll circle back to him at the end of training camp if he
I
can't
hear
find
you.
another spot. But it's awkward. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah. You did make up you just kind of made a good point though. He could be one of those guys that, because we've seen it happen a bunch in the past where a team cuts him, re-signs him for 2 weeks, cuts him again, re-signs him again in like 2 weeks or a couple weeks, cuts him again, and he literally just back and forth on the team because they want him, the relationship's there, but like they're just really thin at another position, and it just only makes sense that they get rid of the running back or whatever position it is at the time. At this point, it'd be the running back. And that very well may happen. I hope he finds a job. He's had success. He's a plotting, like he's a strong runner.
Mm.
He has no hands though. He's got brick hands. That's a big problem, especially in modern day football. That dude
Yep.
couldn't catch nothing.
Very true. All right. That's it for Alfred Morris. Now let's move on to the next topic,
Oh.
which
Speaking of guys that can't catch nothing,
he could catch, he just couldn't block nothing. How Sports Center didn't break down and explode the world when this happened, but Tebow time is up again. Tebow was cut by the Jags.
Sorry. I don't think anyone could defend that, man. That block was sad. That was
Which one,
sad.
I guess? Like, there was one block that was the clear
Well, when he fell.
outside run where he kind of pushed the guy inside and everybody just chalked it up as, that's a horrible block. But, I mean, it was an outside run and his guy went inside, so...
I mean, the one when he ran into another grown man trying to knock him over and he fell on his ass.
Okay, that's a
That
different one
one.
then. That's the
You're
that's
a
the other one, and I agree with you on that
Yep.
one. But there was one that was
That's not.
I'm
I'm not pretending I could do better, but I wouldn't try to be an NFL tight end. You know,
Yeah.
like at my build, I got cornerback on me, and that's it. I understand that. So, I don't like. Good for him for having heart and trying. Did you guys see the Urban Meyer interview after when he was talking about it?
I did not.
I know.
Oh well, it's good. I don't want to butcher it because I very likely will. But it was worth it. He was basically he called Tim Tebow for being like 34 and basically saying his career's over, and they knew it was like unlikely kind of thing.
It's all downhill after 34.
Like what do you like? Know what? Nate Burleson believed in him. Did you guys ever see what Nate Burleson said? Nate Burleson said he thought he was going to get like 1,000 yards or something.
Yeah,
crazy.
Dave Burleson thought he was going to be an All-Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was all on that hype.
Nate Burleson just wanted him to do that so that he could hope to come back himself.
Yeah.
Nate Burleson must have been on the all the smoke podcast before doing Good Morning Football. You know,
Yep.
just I don't know what was happening with that.
I mean, I
Crazy.
think we all saw this coming. Maybe we didn't see it coming this early, but I think we knew he wasn't gonna make out to be an NFL starting tight end. And
Calvin Benjamin was struggling. Like that dude's like 1,000-yard wide receiver. If he couldn't figure out how to be a tight end, I don't know how people thought Tim Tebow, who put literally zero effort into it until 2.5 months ago, like never even thought about being a tight end until 2.5 months ago, was going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to do it. You know, like, I don't like to be that guy, and I was okay with him having the shot, you know what I mean? Because I was pretty sure he was going to get cut. But, like, you know how degrading that is to, like, a tight end to assume that some man can, like, quit on football, go play baseball for a bunch of years, never ever consider the position, just come in and then think he can get a job? That's what I thought what Nate Burleson said was crazy. Like, that's just you put some respect on that position. Straight up.
Yeah.
Like, people need to like stop pretending that position anybody can just walk out there and it's like the leftover position that players just go play because they couldn't make it somewhere else. Like, no, you gotta be you're a talented dude to play that position, and if you play it well, you're extremely talented. Like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, these dudes aren't flukes. Darren Waller, like these guys aren't guys that are like just happen to be big dudes. Like, no, they're really, really talented human beings. And any person who plays if you're a starting guy at that position or any position in the NFL, you're talented as hell, and you just deserve some more respect than people thinking some 34-year-old baseball, whatever you want to call Tim Tebow, could just walk in and do it.
I mean,
Crazy.
I didn't write him off when they signed him, but I mean, obviously I knew it would be an uphill climb. I figured that if he was going to make a roster, it would be sort of as that Swiss Army knife, where you're not relying on him to make blocks because that's not in his skill set.
We found that out.
I mean, regardless of that, I wondered right from the jump, like, really, you're going to try and make blocks? Like, it didn't make, especially with the added emphasis on taking away sort of like the low blocks that tight ends were notorious for prior to this, because they didn't have the skill to make the stand-up blocks. They'd kind of go low and do the chop block-esque and just move on. Same with running backs. But I thought maybe he'd have a chance if he showed the hands and he could, catch the ball effectively enough that he could slot in as that tight end that doesn't have the pass blocking duties. Some teams do roster a tight end like that who isn't so good at the block, but throw a pass at them and they're going to catch it 9 times out of 10. And, of course, he has that extra, Swiss Army knife where, if you run a reverse to Tebow, all of a sudden you're looking at, some weird pass play that, you're not prepared for. So, he does have that added extra element, but, I mean, I knew it was an uphill climb. I didn't think he had a shot. And it was just sort of like that, publicity stunt, I guess. If he makes it, great. If he shows the skills, great. You've got something here. But if he doesn't, it's just Tim Tebow. That's it.
I genuinely think, like, if when he came out of college, if he wanted to make that transition then, like, I totally think he could have done the Taysom Hill role.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That could have been his thing. But you can't come out of college then, because when you're in college, the smashing weights is okay. You know what I mean? They don't care what position you play. Like, they encourage you to just hit those weights. So, and he did. But as soon as you got to the NFL, that's already not encouraged as much. You know what I mean? It's more about tape. You got to use your time as a QB more valuable. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So, that's already negative. And then he stopped playing thing and slimmed down, lost weight, and tried to become a baseball player, have a baseball player build. You know what I mean? Completely different than the NFL, especially than a tight end. And then try to transition again into having you know what I mean? How many times do you think you can it takes a lot of effort to have a tight end build or an NFL build in general. You can't just sit there and flip-flop back and forth and then come in at 34 when you're already having it, you know what I mean? The negative of being 34 and think it's just going to happen. I know we've kind of beat this down a bit, but I just thought it was if Ryan Tannehill was a wide receiver before. That was a thing. He was a college wide receiver. You know what I mean? Like, that guy was good. But, athletes are athletes. When you're young and really young and you have the ability to put in years to change yourself, then I believe in you. And he was a physical specimen. Like, I don't think anyone out there thought Tim Tebow, most people then were like, he shouldn't even be playing a quarterback. Why is he not a tight end? I think that's why he kind of had that, thing in his brain that he could do it. You know what I mean? They said it before, but dude, they said that 12 years ago, man. 12 years ago, I thought I had, the ability to go pro in some sport maybe too. Not really, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. 12 years ago is a long time to assume that you can just do the same thing when it takes so much training. And him, of all people, should understand, the amount of, did you not see what your tight ends did? Did you not see this stuff? I get trying to be a baseball player. You threw a ball and you were trying to switch to another sport in which you throw a ball. You kind of felt like there was something there. I don't know how he thought there was any correlation from playing quarterback 10 years ago to playing tight end now.
Yeah.
And he was a decent minor league player, too.
Yeah.
Do you know that was the longest? Do you know that was the longest gap for any NFL player to take off and return ever in the history of that sport? Yeah. What made him think he could do that? That is crazy. Guys don't even leave that sport and come back to their same position, let alone change it and go from the most protected position in the league to debatably the second least protected position in the league. No one gives a fuck about tight ends. Running backs get shit on, but
tight ends are looked by guys smaller than them. It's just yeah.
It's crazy. Sorry,
it was good for a news story, and it would have been better to be on it at the beginning than the end, I guess. And we'll just have to see. I mean, maybe somebody's crazy enough to give him another shot, but at this point, I think it's back to the booth with you.
Well, if they do, ESPN will do the Decision 2023.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's going back to college, calling college stuff.
Yeah, we'll see him previewing SEC games, I'm sure.
Yeah, talk about a skater.
All right, we got a couple more topics here before we break the huddle and move on to the next segment. And furthering the drama and the one last dance, one last ride element of the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb and several other of the old timers have very loudly stated that they want Clay Matthews back on the roster. I'll point out Clay Matthews didn't play a snap last season. His last active was in 2019 season with Los Angeles, I
Yeah, the
believe,
Rams.
with the Rams. Yeah, and he didn't play badly. He didn't hit the cliff and fall off. He just got cut and then took a year off based on the world around him. So I mean, it's not too crazy an idea, I don't think. I mean, to bring him into camp and say, all right, let's see what you got. Because I mean, he does have the history with the franchise, and he was a great player that I don't think they should have got rid of when they did. But again, I'm not the management, so I've already stated enough how poorly I think of management for those sort of decisions. But do either of you have anything on this topic?
You got anything, Jared?
I mean, I think Rogers needs to come to terms with Father Time. Just because you get the band back together doesn't mean you're going to get the same results. Uh, Clay Matthews would be, 3-4 years removed from playing in Green Bay. Same with Randall Cobb. I mean, you can't keep bringing these guys in and thinking that, hey, just because all the pieces are back, we're just going to replicate everything we always did. Not necessarily. Guys get older. Guys aren't as good as they used to be. Bodies break down. I think Rodgers is trying to replicate a, a comfort thing, where he was comfortable with these players around him. He knew these guys, they had success. And rather than try and create new success with talented guys he has around him now that he didn't have around then, I think I personally wouldn't go for it. Like he's got a good team around him that can get to the NFC Championship game. So why keep, reaching into this bag of guys that he used to play with? I mean, I'm sure he played with a decent couple guys in college too. Why not call them, right?
Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah, right. So, I don't know. I don't think it's putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem. And I don't think bringing back guys from the past is going to solve that issue for Green Bay going forward, because Rodgers is probably on his last year in Green Bay anyways. So what's it going to matter next year when, he's gone and, all these other guys that, hey, you signed for 1-year contracts to make Rodgers happy are gone too. And if you don't win a Super Bowl, what was it all for anyways?
I mean, you're not wrong. I'd just say back to that point, though. I mean, Clay Matthews, I did just pull up his stats really quickly. In 2019 for the Rams, he played in 13 games, had 2 forced fumbles, 8 sacks, and 11 quarterback hits. So, still had a good season. So I mean, if you bring him into camp and be like, you took a year off, fine, you still got it. If you do, here's $1 million, be our, third inside linebacker or, second outside linebackers. Obviously, we have people at those positions, and he's not going to start, but, to add to the rotation as a pass defense specialist, why not? What can it hurt, really? I mean, if it's going to improve relations in any way, in more of a, take a step towards Rodgers' position, does that hurt in the long term?
No, but from a team perspective, how much more do you want to give the guy when he's actively shitting on you in every press conference he gets a chance to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. At the same time, I still sort of say let him come to camp, let him earn a spot. If you bring him to camp and he earns a spot, great. If he doesn't, you still say sorry, it didn't work. Let's move on, and that's that. At least then you can say you tried. You wanted him back. Well, he doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't fit. then it's it's an easier conversation to have that I think sort of I don't want to say placates Rodgers because today they're kind of making well no we weren't really serious about it, we were just kind of joking, okay, but
Yeah.
you said it and it made sense in the prospectus of the Last Dance element. All right, I think we've probably spent enough time on this one. Let's move on to our last topic here in the huddle, and obviously the topic it's based on is one that we'll I don't want to say expound on, but it led to this discussion, and that is that Josh Rosen got cut again. He's now looking for his fifth team in 4 seasons. Um, Anybody have anything they want to say on Josh Rosen before we get to the second point of this?
I don't think he loves football. Anything. As soon as the Miami thing went down for him, I figured his career was done. I don't. He always had his 1 foot on the way out. You know what I mean? And I think things had to go well for him early in his career. I think he had the talent. I think he got hit with a bunch of unfortunate circumstances that led to this. Like I think he's better than perception and all that is, especially talent wise. The quarterback is a lot mental, so clearly mentally he's not there. But I genuinely think that if he was put in a different situation and felt like he was wanted and loved by a franchise, he would have been a successful quarterback in this league. I think he will be an afterthought, and nobody will be talking about Josh Rosen again in 2 years, though. I don't think he has the love and drive to push the talent through this adversity. I think it takes a lot from any human being. I think if anyone could go through, I don't think, I'm not saying he's gone through, there's lots of people in the world, lots and lots that went through way worse. But when it comes to sports, what he's went through, it's a very tough thing for any person to go through that adversity and come out of it on top. At this point, everyone's cheering against him, and I don't see a guy who doesn't fully you. You have to absolutely love the sport to be able to to get through this, because you're gonna have to grind and grind. Everyone in the world is gonna be wanting a reason to cut him. So you're gonna have to just grind and grind, and I don't see him doing that. He's just good. His parents are rich, and I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think okay. I gave him the benefit of the doubt in Arizona when his line was trash. I figured, he deserves better. He's a good quarterback. But the situation around him was just so bad that he could not overcome that, which was fair. It was terrible that year in Arizona. Okay, so he moves on to Miami. And I think, okay, now he's going to be able to shine through. I mean, it's not an ideal situation. Miami wasn't exactly the greatest team at that point. And it just exposed him. He could not do anything with the pieces that were around him, and he just could not make a mediocre situation good. And it reflected on him that then teams were able to see, okay, it's not an external problem. He's just not cut out for a starting quarterback job, which is fine. I mean, you can be a serviceable backup, but then when he went to San Francisco, I think it just exposed him further to Kyle Shanahan. And this past week he played most of third team reps in the preseason game. And that was all Kyle needed to see was, okay, I want Nate Sudfeld as my number 3 guy. And Josh Rosen is not cut out to be even, a third string quarterback in the NFL. And I think he's broken by this point because, like Zach said, he's been through so much the past, 4 or 5 teams that, I mean, what can you do with the guy? he's shown everything he can. He's been given the keys to the car, and he's shown he drives it straight into a pole.
To play, I agree. To play with Jared's point, like to ever know what Josh Rosen truly is, you're gonna have to give him like an ideal situation, and he hasn't earned that, and nobody's going to give him that situation. So he's basically like, it's on people. Like the thing is about like a lot of quarterbacks, like you can get drafted into a bad situation. You know what I mean? And everyone loves you and all that stuff, but you got to fix that. And if you don't fix it quick, they're gonna move on from you. And when people move on to you, like this Sam Darnold stuff, that's a rarity. People don't really give these guys a set. Like look at Marcus Mariota. That dude was a number 2 overall pick, and he's a backup quarterback, and he wasn't terrible when he played. That's the thing. Like it's not like Marcus Mariota was Josh Rosen. You know what I mean? Marcus Mariota proved this dude belongs in the NFL. Whether it's a start, like I think he's I think he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL.
I agree.
Do I think he deserves to start? Because again, he's going to need the situation to work for him. But like, I don't right now. I don't think Zach Wilson is a better quarterback than Mariota. Do I think going forward can he be? Yes, of course. But teams get, I don't know. It's so football is a rough sport in general. Pro sports are rough. You have limited opportunity, and you better take advantage of that opportunity. And if you don't take advantage of it, they will forget and move on from you fast.
I mean, Josh Rosen is a tough one for me, because we've never really gotten a chance to see what he can do. He came in with all the hype and the hoopla and the high draft pick and, all of that, and he was doomed by it because he, by a fan base and by management, was made the scapegoat because he was the only one left standing after it. Like, it just, you fired the coach, and I think they also had a GM change as well after that. So, I mean, they fire everybody, and they bring in new people, and of course, they're going to want to do their own thing, and, you bring in a coach who's already stated a preference, and it's not the guy you've got. He is salivating over the possibility of getting a new guy that fits his system to a T, and I mean that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a guy who fits your system to the T, but I think they kind of did Josh Rosen dirty by that, and that they never gave him a chance. Like I pulled up his numbers, and they weren't actually that bad. Like they weren't good. But they weren't throw the baby out with the bathwater bad. I mean, he played in 14 games. He started 13 of them. He was 217 for 393 incompletions for 55.2% completion rating. 2,278 yards, 11 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That's not that bad. I mean, it's not good. It's not great. But that's, 13 games. That's not a bad sample size. I mean, that's 3,000 plus yards in a full season. That's
the league just doesn't mess around. I'm gonna put an example out here, and I think it's gonna legit like Drew Lock right now. We know the side conversations that I've had on with Drew Lock, but Drew Lock is in a position right now that if he goes and has a great season, right, like legitimate great season. He is in the position to be like Josh Allen, correct? You guys agree with me?
Yeah,
legitimately.
He's got that potential upside if he has the year that you.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like you might get paid. You know what I mean. Like he might get paid. A lot of people are gonna love him with the young pieces the Broncos have. There will be a lot of positivity. But if he has a bad year, he may be Josh Rosen. That's how this league works. You know what I mean? They don't play around. This one season can turn Drew Lock to a superstar or a guy we forget about that might not even be able to get his backup position in this league because of how harsh this league is. and
Well,
he's like
Paxton Lynch.
24. They don't like. It's so rough. Like there's guys in the past you can look at. I think. Oh, I can't remember. He was a former Tennessee Titan, I believe. Not Blaine Gabbert. I can't think of his name, but he had like pretty decent stats. And like, I don't know. I to this day I don't know why he retired. Like 27. But like, maybe the league got to him because they were just giving up. But it's a harsh league out there, man. They don't mess around. You don't show up, they're just like, get out. We're on to the next.
It is,
guy.
but I mean, I think like we're talking. You compare him to Drew Lock, and I mean, Drew Lock's had what? This is his third season.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had chances. This is his third chance to make something of himself. It's his last chance to make something of himself. You're right.
I agree, but hold on. In the same sense, if the Broncos finished with the worst record last year, he wouldn't be getting this third chance. Let's make that clear. If we had the ability to get Trevor Lawrence, like Arizona had the ability to get Kyler Murray,
I'm not saying that
playing football.
I'm not saying that that's the problem. Like I understand bringing in the new staff and you've got a guy that's tailor made for your system, and you have that relationship and you have that want, that that drive to get this guy. I understand all that. The problem was the way they went about it with Rosen. For me, like they made him the problem. There was never really a chance of, as good as Josh is, and as much as we'd like to give a shot, there's this kid right here who fits our system perfectly. Fits us like a glove. Josh doesn't. He's just not, they did him dirty on that, and then they send him off to Miami, who's already licking their chops. Oh man, we can get Tua, we can get Burrow. They were already sizing up Tua and Burrow for jerseys when they acquired Rosen.
No, I agree. Like he got the who end of the stick. I get that. Like I just I think I agree. None of this is Josh Rosen. Like he had his opportunity, but he didn't get a fair opportunity. I think this more points out to where I was kind of saying earlier. Like if you don't have the team and you're not ready to build around a particular quarterback, don't draft the quarterback. No one's making you do that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And if you do, that's your dude. Like, I think the Kyler came to them, and I don't necessarily blame the decisions they had. I think Rosen got screwed, but I also think they should have took Kyler Murray. But I also think they're only in the position to take Kyler Murray because they didn't do a good enough job making sure Rosen had the chance to be successful. If they did that better, all of this might not have happened. If they went again, it's a steal. Like they shouldn't have. Maybe but like Dallas got Amari Cooper. Yes. Mm-hmm. Why didn't you outbid Dallas for Amari Cooper? Offer a first and a fifth, and you get Amari Cooper for your young quarterback. Why did you let Dallas do it? You thought it was important to get Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. Like it was important then. Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? No, but when you got Josh Rosen, you're like, yeah, we're going to give him nothing. You get Christian Kirk. That's your best dude. I guess they had Larry, but like...
This is end of career. I love Larry, but this is end of career Larry. He's your rock, but he's...
And Larry was in his role. Larry doesn't go outside. He was a decent slot wide receiver. He's not punishing defenses. No one's scared. It's like, okay, you'll get some yards. You got to do something else, though.
Yeah.
Like...
It was predictable before they played the first snap.
Yeah, everyone in the world knew that Josh. Like, I hated that the dude got drafted there. I love Josh Rosen as a prospect. I talked to Jer about him before when he was playing in UCLA. Mm-hmm. When he went to Arizona, the writing was on the wall that this was probably going to go bad. And the moment they had the worst record in the year, it was like, Josh, you're probably screwed, dude. Like your career is like already over. Like you need a lot of things to go your way now. And it's just not likely going to happen because that just doesn't happen.
It's a stigma he can't wash off. Like
it's
he's not the problem that Arizona sucked. He's not.
Exactly.
I read you guys the numbers, those statistics. They're not awful. Like they're okay,
especially not for a rookie.
Exactly. Like they scapegoated him in such a way that it ruined his career. That by the time he went to Miami wasn't looking at it like we're getting a top draft pick guy for basically nothing. I mean, what did Miami give up to get him?
A second.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're getting a guy who a year ago was a top pick in the draft for a second-round pick. We've got a shot to do something special here, but no, we're already sizing up 2 quarterbacks in the draft next year for jerseys to come into this team. Like they destined
think
him to fail.
Arizona's management is terrible. I think it's terrible. Honestly, I do. Chan, maybe he'll see this and he'll like, but like the Chandler Jones stuff that's going on. We talked about last week with Patrick Peterson. We don't know if that's true or not, but that doesn't seem great. How they handled this Josh Rosen thing. They traded Rosen for a second, and they used that second to get Andy Isabella instead of DK Metcalf.
There's a lot of question marks
there. That was a decision they made. That happened. You know what I mean? What did you do? What did you do? Draft Kyler Murray with the first overall pick? The obvious choice? That's all they've really done.
I mean, they stole DeAndre Hopkins.
J.J. Watt looks like a great acquisition, but J.J. Watt's old, dude. J.J. Watt might go out there and give you 9-10 sacks next year and like look like a good player, but like we're talking about he's got to compete with names like his own brother TJ, got to compete with Myles Garrett, got to compete with Chase Young, got to compete with Aaron Donald. These are the top defensive players on the line. He's got to compete with. Is J.J. Watt in that category anymore? Arizona's, I don't know. I don't like that.
They're flashy.
Franchise.
They're flashy.
Yeah. I don't like
you said it right. What have they done? They drafted Kyler Murray and fell into success. I mean, they stole DeAndre Hopkins. I mean,
yeah, Bill O'Brien. I can't say stuff that will be on a podcast about Bill O'Brien.
If there's ever been we've established this. We are 3 guys. We've been in a fantasy football league for a long time. If somebody in our league had made that DeAndre Hopkins trade, we as a league would be like, "Whoa, no, sir, that's not. Cut that crap. No way."
And look at the trades that have happened in our league. That's the other thing. It's not like we just veto wild stuff. Like we let stuff happen. We might voice our opinion, but the whole league would have been like, no. You're crazy. You are
and for what? I mean, from Arizona's perspective, they made that trade to be a 500 team.
I mean, no matter what GM you are, you find out that's the price for DeAndre Hopkins. You're like, take it.
What happened? No. But how did you? Speaking of, this has gone down a different route, but it's how did that happen? How did that Did they call one team and they were just the first offer they heard were we're in? Because how did I just don't even know how they got to the point that a second was there. Did they literally just call Arizona and Arizona's like, oh yeah, well we'll give a second, and Bill's like, done. There's no way you called multiple teams. I
mean, alphabetically they're the first team, right? So I mean. He didn't have to flip through his Rolodex too far.
You're probably right. That how much of a joke that is.
It wouldn't shock me.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
They were just the first team that happened to call them that day. There's issues with Hopkins. Let's call and let's throw a lowball offer at them and see what they. It's I've recounted conversations. I mean, I've said it on the show, and I've obviously said it to you personally. When I threw the Alvin Kamara trade at you, it was just a throw something at the wall. And start from there. It's a building block trade offer. And I'm staring at my phone, 15, 20 minutes later, and all of a sudden I see your trade has been accepted. Excuse me? What? What? Pardon? Yep. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. You throw it at the wall and you'll be like, okay, here's where we start. And then they're like, great, fantastic, I love this deal. And you're just like, what? Just happened?
Yeah.
You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You just say thank you very much and move on about your day. I mean, that's what it feels like.
With that trade, is either team better off from that trade? I mean, are the Texans better off? God, no. They are significantly worse. Is Arizona better? Yes. I mean, statistically, Hopkins is a fantastic wide receiver. Is he helping them win games? Not so much. So, I mean,
Arizona looks a lot like Seattle to me. At least
they look great on paper.
Yeah,
they look great on paper.
Great on paper. They look phenomenal on paper.
It's a question of whether or not that paper. You put water on a piece of paper and that's it. You poke holes in it.
They can't. They still have nobody who can cover their shadow. What is Buda Baker going to now play cornerback? Like, who's the cornerback? Okay, I think we have another thing we were Josh Rosen supposed to talk about. We're keep going sidetracked and.
I mean, that's kind of what we
Next
do, though. We're
topic,
actually doing good on
so-
time based on where we are and what we have left. We're actually doing pretty good at looking at about a, 140 show length. But Josh Rosen brings up an excellent point, which when I wrote it down, I kind of thought, "There's no way, nobody can make a case for anyone else." But once I actually did a little bit of delving and realized, wait, that was that recent. Realized that okay, there's a couple guys that you can make a case for here. Josh Rosen, biggest bust of the decade. True
I don't
or
believe
false?
so. I don't think so. Could you do me? Do you guys have access to a computer right now?
Yeah.
That you can.
Mhm.
Who is the tackle that went first overall? Cam Robinson, or did he go number 2 and it was like Fisher number 1 or something? Or
I mean, it still counts. Either way is 1 or 2.
yeah, Cam Robinson or whatever. That's a pretty big flop.
I think Rosen
Yeah.
is a big enough bust just based on the opportunities given to him. He's not a one and done guy. So it's not like he had a terrible year in Arizona and everyone just wrote him off and he was out of the league. He had the opportunity in Miami. He had the opportunity, granted a lesser opportunity, but he had an opportunity in San Francisco. He wasn't going to be the starter, but if he can't even be considered the third string quarterback on the team, I mean, that's a significant fall from what was he, the 10th overall pick in 2018?
I think so.
So, I mean, that's I think there's
Was the question biggest bust ever?
Last 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
I think there's a case there. Maybe not he's the guy, but I think there's enough evidence there and there's enough time gone by to say, okay, he's been given these opportunities and he just did not do nearly enough with them.
Does expectation come into consideration when we're considering who would be a bigger bust? Like inability to meet their expectations? Because another one would be Jadeveon Clowney.
I mean, I think he sort of
not that
has...
he's a bad player, but like he missed like his entire rookie year for Houston, then didn't really do much in the corresponding years, and then they never even re-signed him. So in reality, you used the number 1 overall pick for 3-year good right end.
Yeah. I think
that's a pretty.
I think the
If you
only
consider
caveat there is
expectations.
just the injuries. Like he was not healthy for what, a considerable amount of that time.
Well, that's why I said, do you consider expectations, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to consider the whole draft package, right? Expectations plus hype
I got one.
equals the whole
Clelin
package.
Ferrell. Clelin Ferrell.
Yep.
What has he done? Number 4 overall pick
done.
for the Raiders.
Well,
Didn't you just say he got moved to the second? Like he's like
the
not
second
even
string,
in the
yeah.
starting rotation anymore.
Yeah, he got
That's a
moved to second.
flop.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, if you want to compare things like hype into it, and obviously the whole draft picture, the draft package of getting this guy, all the hype that leads into it, I have a name for you boys.
Oh, hold on, can I guess your name? Can I try guessing it?
You can try.
One guess. I'll only do one guess. John Ross.
No.
Damn, because that was a big one too. That was a terrible flop. Golly, that was terrible.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I agree.
Tell me
with
yours,
John.
Johnny.
Do you want to
Good.
take it? Do you want to take a guess at who I'm talking about here? When you encapsulate hype and expectations and all of those things together, doesn't necessarily have to be a super high draft pick. That's another thing. It doesn't have to be like the top 3, the top 4 to be a draft bust, and based on hype and expectations.
I was almost thinking Jameis Winston, but that's probably not who you're thinking.
I'll tell you this, Zach. You got the first name right. I'm, of course, talking Johnny Football.
Ooh, that was a big flop.
Now, here's one that I didn't. Here is embarrassment. Okay, Johnny Football had 4, 5, 6 kicks at the can to make rosters and make a success out of his career, and got multiple years to start in Cleveland. Okay, career numbers, yardage, 1,200 less than Josh Rosen.
Wow.
Josh Rosen had 2,845 yards. Johnny Football, 1,675. Touchdowns.
How many games did he play?
14 to 20, so it's 6 games different.
Wait. Johnny Football got
more games?
1,200 yards in 20 games?
1,600. It's...
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
we knew
bad.
he was bad, but, like, looking back...
Touchdowns
I wonder
to
if that's because he got
interceptions.
pulled from games. Is that because he was getting pulled, so he wasn't able to complete them statistically?
Maybe.
Probably. That doesn't help. That doesn't help him playing good football.
No.
Johnny had 7 touchdowns.
understanding.
Josh had
I'm
12.
just-
The only category where Johnny actually was statistically better was his touchdown to interception ratio was 1.
That's
7
kinda
touchdowns,
crazy.
7 interceptions, compared to 12 touchdowns, 19 interceptions for Josh Rosen.
7 touchdowns though is not good for 20
No.
goddamn games.
I mean, and then we
Right.
can point to team around him. Right, exactly. Who had a better team around them? Probably Cleveland. Which is
they were right around the swing where they were hitting things on the rebuild.
which
I
is
mean-
Dude,
sad.
I don't care who you have around you. You get more than 7 touchdowns in 20 games.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
Or
for
you
a guy
don't.
with
Like,
legs. Like,
I'm a guy who I'm not the guy who's quick to hate on it. I don't praise dudes quick, and I don't hate dudes quick. But that's just no.
the only tangible statistics where Johnny was better than Josh in a shorter period was rushing. 259 and 1 touchdown for Johnny, 151 and 0 for Josh.
there has to be
Even
something.
that's
That is-
not good. I mean,
Mhm.
Tom Brady has more rushing touchdowns than that in that span. You know, like
Yep.
it's. I didn't realize it was that bad statistically until I looked at it. You know, I pulled up a draft bust lists, and Johnny came at number 10, and I'm like, all time, really? But there was one
Yep.
other name that fit into the decade parameters, just barely. So you may not be thinking of him. Also drafted in the last 10 years.
John Ross isn't no one.
He's
damn,
not,
really.
because that's just more of a, whatever,
That dude was like number 9 or something, and was the first wide receiver drafted. And I guess he got some touchdowns. He
Yeah.
makes no sense how he never got yards, but he got touchdowns.
Yeah.
Oh,
Also on this list, this is a Pro Football Network list, top 10 worst draft picks ever made. 2 players in the decade. The number 1 overall worst draft pick of all time was in fact in this decade. He was the number 3 overall draft pick in 2012. Trent Richardson.
Yep. 100%. Boy, did he have hype coming in. And boy, did he not live up to potential at all.
he did for 1 year. Yeah, his rookie year was pretty
His
good.
rookie year was good.
Yeah.
He had, 950 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. So he did actually start out great. It was everything that came after it that went awful. Yeah. So
It was such a fall, though. Like,
it
oh,
really
God.
was. For humor's sake, and since it does tie into something that may be a topic of conversation that we end up having, and something else that we're gonna talk about very, very briefly. Let's round out this list. The Pro Football Network top 10 draft picks ever made. Number 2, Ryan Leaf, 98, second overall.
Yep.
I was about to ask, how was Trent worse than Ryan Leaf? Didn't Ryan Leaf just do nothing and get addicted to pills?
Yeah.
15 interceptions on 245 attempts, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I would put
But
him worse
his
than
career-
At least Trent gave the team a good year.
his
Leaf didn't give
career,
anybody anything. All he did was steal pills.
he did end up kind of balancing out the ratio, finishing his career with 36 interceptions and 14 touchdowns. So,
Those are good numbers, yeah.
it kind of balanced out a little, I guess.
No, really. No. Amplify Josh Rosen's numbers by 2, and they're already better than Leafs.
Oh, I'm not questioning that. All right, number
He's
3,
so bad.
2007, number 1 overall pick, Jamarcus Russell.
Yep, I knew he was going to be high.
Number
You remember the story about the tapes, right?
That's where the old-fashioned 20 in the back of the playbook story comes from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they sent him home with blank tapes and told him to watch them and come back the next day. And he came back and he was like, "Yeah, I saw those blitz packages. They were great."
Great tapes. It's that great story, right? It goes back to the old. It's in draft day, sort of memorialized. You put like a $20 bill at the end of the playbook, and then you ask them about them at the interview, and if they actually read the playbook through. All right, number 4, number 2 overall pick in 1989, offensive tackle Tony Mandarich to the Green Bay Packers. Yikes!
Oh, he was terrible. He was the worst.
Yikes.
I remember watching him back in the day. I was like 3.
Yeah, that was what, back in your 30s?
God damn it.
Number 5, 99, number 1 overall pick, Tim Couch.
Yeah,
Yikes.
another Cleveland quarterback.
That's where John Jarrett was sitting back in his 30s watching.
Yep, watching those terrible Browns teams.
Number 6, 1999, number 3 overall pick, quarterback Akili Smith.
Don't know who that is.
Yep, don't know who that is.
Probably a reason for it.
I think that's the point.
There's going to be a lot of people who are like, I don't know who Josh Rosen is in like 5 years too, so.
Right.
Number 7, 2003, number 2 overall pick, Charles Rogers.
Nope. Don't know.
He's the worst.
Yeah, he's a bum.
All right, a name that should actually be noteworthy because, he was great in college and then did nothing in the NFL. I mean, that's probably the same said for all this, but so much charisma. Number 8, selected in the 1987 supplemental draft, the Boz, Brian Bosworth.
Yeah.
Can you just say about that guy?
Yes, he actually appeared on AEW Dynamite tonight in the front row. Just a random appearance for the Boz.
The most noteworthy thing he's done since that draft.
Completely. We talked last week about the salary cap and how rookies should be able to make what they want and not that. I'd point out in 1987, coming out of the supplemental draft, Boz signed a 10-year contract worth $11 million. In 1987,
Attaboy.
he was out of the league by 1989.
Get paid.
Number 9, Johnny Manziel. We already talked about him. And number 10, I think this might have been who you were thinking of. No, maybe not. He's too late. 2020, number 29 overall pick, Isaiah Wilson.
Isn't he the Titans guy? Who,
that's the guy that
Was that who you were thinking of? Yeah. That was who rounded it out.
He's the Titans guy that has all those issues and stuff and is already retired.
Yeah. He didn't even. Yeah.
So obviously that's going to wrap up that top 10. That's going to wrap up that segment. That is going to lead to a bit of an announcement we've kind of been sitting on for the last few weeks. We've talked about different ways to add interaction and extra content, and we have decided that, as is ever popular both on YouTube and in reality, we're going to be adding a countdown show to the Inside Handoff network. We're going to be doing top 10 countdowns where the lists are aggregated from our responses as well as responses of friends of the show, people we're friends with outside of the podcast, outside of the league as well. So if you would like to be added to the people who get these lists, hit us up on our Twitter or on Facebook and we'll add you to those lists. First show topic we have in the can is the top 10 head coaches specifically, of the NFL. So look for that sometime in the next month or so as we, finalize the actual shooting schedule as well as things like that. And we're going to be shooting these in bulk, So we're going to have multiple topics out at once for you guys to rank, and then we will make out the different episodes and release them on a staggered schedule basis. So we are excited for that.
Look at this guy yawning like he's not why we're podcasting at 3:20 in the morning.
Oh boy.
Oh, I've been busy, man. Like,
All right. That is going to do it this week. We broke in the huddle, and it is now time for us to sprinkle some Dynasty Dimes. Don't really have much to talk about here, so I don't want to say let's keep this kind of brief because we're already at an hour and 35 minutes, and it is at the ungodly hour of 3:30 a.m. on the East Coast. All right, Dynasty Dimes. Obviously, I'm not going to drop names because, innocent until proven guilty and all that stuff, but I'm sure you'll be able to extrapolate which player forced the creation of this topic. Last week we talked about how do you respond to strife with management with your players. This week, a much more serious question: legal trouble. When do you worry about that, and how do you handle a star player or really any player on your dynasty roster getting in legal trouble? Who wants to start?
it all depends on what the legal trouble is. That's a big factor. I definitely don't hold personal things. You know what I mean? So if I don't agree with what that dude did, I don't care. He can stay on my fantasy roster. But yeah, that's outside of that. Like, once you get the details, I think if it's serious, you're worried, and if it's not, you're not.
Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's cause for concern initially. Obviously, I mean, there's that initial dread feeling of, oh my God, this player's done for. But I think as long as you are, I mean, it's a depth issue, really. Let's say your stud running back is, wanted for robbery or whatever. As long as you have enough depth that you can live without this player, I don't think it's that big of an issue. I mean, there are certain players where, okay, if Derrick Henry all of a sudden gets arrested in week, 12, geez, am I making the playoffs? Maybe not. But I think it's, you take it on a basis by basis thing where, look at your roster, figure out, okay, can I live without this player? Because I think when it comes to Dynasty, you shouldn't have that one player that you can't live without. You need to have a structure to your roster where, because same with an injury, a guy could, tear his ACL in week 2 and he's gone for that year. And you need to have a functioning roster for those following 15 weeks. And I think the same goes for, pending legal issues. Because as we've seen, the NFL isn't quick to jump down a guy's throat with it. Same with the Zeke thing. They were not immediately going to suspend Zeke. They were going to wait on it. So, it's a timing thing.
That you bring up a good point with that, because that I think might be more nerve-wracking, because I did say it's all about the seriousness, but even on a lesser thing, like Jared brought up a good point. If they don't intend to suspend him early, you know what I mean? Like, it hasn't came out. Like, you're relying on a dude that like ones if he gets suspended during the playoff weeks, like our playoff weeks, not NFL playoff weeks, like you can't even replace the guy then. So I think at the very least, it forces, like, even if you're comfortable, you're like, I like my team, you know what I mean? You still have to consider adding some depth, no matter what. Like, maybe not sell the house, but like, if you know for sure he's suspended weeks 1 through 4, and like Jared said, like if if you're a competitive team, you should be able to handle that. You know what I mean? You should be able to have your stud miss 4 weeks. Like, it's not ideal, but you should be able to do it. But if you don't know when that suspension is coming, that doesn't really matter. You kind of, it's not about like, can I get by? If it's later in the season, like, it's about like, I need to win or I'm eliminated. You know? So now you might have to be like he said with Zeke, I know his suspension came in a different, but like, if that was getting later in the season and we hadn't heard anything yet, like, whoever owns Zeke, like, I think you got to go buy another stud because like you can't risk not having a stud. Like this isn't week 2.
Yeah, you don't know when they're going to drop the hammer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have that in the back of your mind of like, okay, when do I pull the trigger on this and solidify my roster for life without player X? You know, because I don't know when, you know, Goodell's going to have the final ruling or whatever. And, you know, you need to make sure that you've got a backup plan in place before that happens, because you don't know if he's going away for 6 games. You don't know if he's going away for 13 games, you know. So I think as long as you have a steady backup plan in place before, you know, they get the final ruling. So that way, okay, yes, this sucks. My guy's gone for 6 weeks, but I can cover those 6 weeks with a guy, you know, 80% is good as that starter.
I got a question because it made me think of something. Let's stop it. If you know a guy, like say someone, like for example, Johnny right now, say we find out Alvin Kamara is facing a suspension. We know it's not going to be season long, but we know it could be anywhere from like 2 to 6, you know. We don't know the information. Did we put the squeeze on this guy? Like, is that as a fantasy manager, do you decide to, you know he needs it? Like, I know we can't collude. Like, I'm not suggesting collusion. But
no,
like,
we're purely hypothetical on the thing.
Yeah, I didn't mean like as like your own fantasy manager. Do you start going like, if this guy comes sniffing around for a running back, like I'm making them pay?
I mean,
Like,
you kind of have to. You know, you have to take on that stance to a certain degree. I mean, you know, there's also the flip side of that. You know, do you reach out and put the hand on him and be like, "Wow, you're looking pretty bad there," but you know, I'll take him off your hands. I'll take that burden. You know, and it's that flip side of that coin. You know, where you take that risk versus it's risk reward, right? I mean, like for me, it comes down to a whole host of things. You know, first one, what did you do? Like that's the first one. What did you do? You know, player X goes out and gets arrested, gets a DUI. Great, I don't care. You might miss a game. That's no big deal.
No.
Now, player X goes out and gets arrested for smacking around his wife.
In an elevator, you might never play another game.
Well, I was going to get to that point. Like, that's bad. That's not good. But it's still sort of, I don't want to say, like, I'm speaking purely from the perspective of, you know, it's not good, but it's survivable. Now, if you add a preponderance of evidence, like, I don't know, you did it in a public place and there's video of it, I'm reaching out to every GM, hopefully before the news gets too wide, and saying, hey, you want to take this guy?
Yeah, the second you get
I'm
the
selling
notification,
this guy. I'm
you're
selling. Who do you? You're hoping that there is a. I don't want to say a patsy in your league, but you're hoping there's that one guy in your league who's not following the news so hot, and you can hope to get back a par trade, like what you'd expect, and be like, thank God that headache's not mine anymore. You know, I mean, obviously, historically, Ray Rice is the example of that. The guy was a great running back, probably a top tier fantasy running back at the time, and in one instance, that's it. Your career's over. You're never playing again in your life. You know, I'm sure there were a metric crap ton of fantasy owners who were completely fudged by that. You know, because there's nothing you can do about it. It's out of your hands. I mean, and of course that. And, you know, there's other things that, you know. Let's be honest. I hate to say it and it sounds so awful, but the NFL takes a much harder stance on some things than it does other things. I mean, we have players who are either in Canton or destined for Canton who have been charged with murder.
Yeah.
And rape. and all these other things that in reality should be career enders, but are just hiccups and bumps in a Hall of Fame career. I mean, obviously, if you know the history of the game, you know who I'm referring to, because it happened during their career. And I believe in both instances it happened during their career. I'm not talking about the same guy. So it can't just be a hiccup no matter how serious it is. But that's just how the NFL has taken things. It's what did you do? How much proof is there? And I mean, God, I hate to say it because it sounds so awkward, but what color is their skin? I don't want to take it that way, but it is a reality.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers does something, probably not a big deal.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray does the same thing, and that could be it. And it's awful to say that, but this is a sport that's built on,
There goes our podcast. Johnny's out here talking about it with the NFL on episode 3. We're screwed. It's already over. We got nothing. We might as well fold it.
Well, another point that Johnny was kind of hinting to, that
Sorry.
the league penalty for domestic abuse was previously 4 games, I believe it was, and then the Ray Rice situation happened, and there was such a backlash that the league had to update it to 6 games because people were saying it was not enough for this.
As a whole, penalty. It's not harsh enough across the board.
Yeah.
No. For another example, there was a man that was who has a nickname over of the place in London who did something, and it got a bit of backlash and such. And then Jameis Winston did essentially the same thing it was in an Uber or whatever, but in the end it was essentially the same thing, touching without consent. And the backlash that man received versus what Big Ben received, it wasn't even close to one and the same.
Yeah.
And the act, you can't really separate the act. The act was you can't get pretty much it's so close. And Johnny has a very fair point with that. They do treat people of color harsher than and to elaborate on that more, because Johnny said what it is, with the particular thing too, if you're smoking marijuana as a white athlete, there's a good chance, in the whole world, there's a good chance as easy, the police officer might brush it away, your coach might brush it away, management, it might not even get to that point, but where you're a black athlete, that's a, you know what I mean? You're already getting smoked. That is something you do have to consider. And it's unfortunate because I don't want to be looking at my guy who's, you know what I mean, I'm a fan of and he's on my dynasty roster and be like, damn, dude, this dude might be getting 8 games instead of 4 because he's black. That's crazy. That is, but that's realistic. It's
an unfortunate reality. It took a turn that I didn't want it to take, and in hindsight, I wish I'd have shut my mouth, but I didn't. Where it's out there, we said it. But I mean, it's what it is. Again, it's the point of reality. If you look at a player like Josh Gordon, smoking pot ruined this guy's career. Smoking pot ruined this guy's career. Guy's not doing meth. Guy's not doing crack. He's smoking pot.
Yeah.
I just get with the times.
Which is legal in how many states now?
It's more a point of you look in the history of sports, look at the 80s, look at the 70s, and there are prevalent stories of players openly snorting drugs in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And what was done about it? Nothing. You look the other way. And I understand, of course, it's a different tolerance, and some things you shouldn't, but other things, whatever. I mean, as a player, as a person, as a human being, I would much rather find out that NFL players are dealing with the bumps and bruises by getting high and binging on Taco Bell than getting addicted to opioids and ruining the rest of their lives. But that's a rabbit hole that we don't need to go down, because here we are an hour and 50 minutes into the show, and I think we've done enough chasing after the white rabbit tonight.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess, what it is, what did they do, who are they? All of those things are issues, and, you put the hand on somebody else, depending on who it is. You can't get rid of them, but that guillotine will hang over your head all season long. I mean, I look back to, I cannot for the life of me remember, when was Zeke? Was it 3 years ago, or was it 4 years ago? Or was it 2 years ago? I can't actually
I
remember.
think it was two.
Okay, so then that was the year that I lost the title, not won the title. And I drafted Zeke in the fourth. Now, obviously, this is redraft, so it's not dynasty, but again, it holds that thing because if a player has this guillotine hanging over their head in a redraft league, it's going to tank their value.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when they're going to miss. And I took the chance on Zeke, and then he appealed, and that's the worst thing I want to hear as a GM in anything. I do not
Hmm.
want my players to appeal in the middle of the season. I understand it, and of course, I support the notion behind it, but for God's sakes, don't ruin my season because a suspension in week 3 hurts, but it's not season ending. If you get a
Yeah.
4-game suspension in week 14, that's it. My season's done. We're past the trade deadline. There's no way I can patch this unless somebody's on waivers. It's a death blow that you had no way to plan for. Um, yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week's segments of Dynasty Dimes, and hopefully we will not go chasing the white rabbit again like that. I'm going to blame it on the fact it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and say that my filter is turned off, and maybe I'll wake
Yeah.
up in the morning and be like, God, I gotta edit that out of the show. What was I thinking? But we'll we'll see. All right. That's it for Dynasty Dimes. That's gonna take us. No booth review this week because that's all preseason. There's no real big games. No real big topics worth discussing. Just little bits here and there that really, an hour and
I
50 minutes
mean,
in. There's no point in.
I I watched Nathan Peterman play against the Seahawks for 2 quarters there, and for a fair chunk of it, I was thinking, you know what, Nathan Peterman actually looks pretty good. And then, right as that thought entered my head, he immediately threw a pick. So,
The
you know,
plaintiff rests. Um, all right, no booth review this week because obviously there's nothing to talk about. It's preseason, and it's not the point of the preseason where we're actually seeing starters play. We only covered the Hall of Fame game last week because it was the Hall of Fame game and it was the first game of the year. All right, it
did you know
is
Geno Smith is still in the NFL? He's Russell Wilson. He's Russ's backup. I
still
didn't know that either.
there. You have it. Geno Smith can still get a job. Josh Rosen can't. Think about that one for a minute.
There you
Um,
go.
all right, that put a nice, neat little bow on everything we've talked about. It is now time for the 2-minute drill. This week, running the 2-minute drill is the guy above me if you're watching video, or Jeremy if you're not. Jerry, you got the 2-minute drill this week. You
All
told me
right.
earlier you did a little differently this week. So much like I introduced
Yes.
something new last week, you are introducing new stuff this week. What do you have for us in this week's 2-minute drill?
All right. I've got 5 questions we're going to discuss, and they're kind of all over the place. Some true false, some ranking players, some keep trade cut, a little bit of everything. All right. True false. Austin Eckler will have a better season than Saquon Barkley.
False.
If Barkley plays a full season, false.
Okay. I think I agree. I mean, I'm on the fence with Saquon being healthy, as I went into earlier, but I think Eckler's got a good ceiling, but he's not going to be better than a healthy 100% Saquon Barkley.
I'll say this before you get to question 2. I'm now exhaling greatly because here I thought this was going to be like some history trivia, like, like I'm thinking like, oh God, what's my knowledge of the history of the game?
Oh,
Okay, I'm feeling better about this now. Okay, go ahead.
everything we're covering in this is it's going to be relevant to
Although
2020.
I do think I'd probably score better than Zach on a history exam at 3 o'clock in the morning.
This is true. All right, rank these 3 Jets wide receivers in redraft: Corey Davis, Jameson Crowder, Elijah Moore.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna.
I'm gonna say more Crowder, third guy.
Davis?
I'm going to say Crowder, Davis, Moore. I think
Okay.
Moore might end up with the second most yard, but I don't think he will fantasy-wise. I don't think he's going to get in the end zone enough in his rookie season.
Always
That's
take the
fair.
rookie because you never know what you're gonna get. That's my stance, and I wouldn't draft either of those Jets either. So
I really like Elijah Moore, but I mean, I'm hearing, some training camp rumblings that he's, nursing an injury, and you kind of want to avoid those things. I would probably go with Davis, Moore, and Crowder. Um, I liked Crowder a lot last year, but he was really hit or miss and couldn't stay healthy. So, you know. All right. True or false? The Pittsburgh Steelers will have a top 10 rushing team by the end of the year.
oh God, I hope so.
False.
Okay.
I
I
think they're. Sorry, go ahead.
go no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think their production from the running back position will be increased, both receiving and just on the ground, but I don't think they'll be a top 10 running team.
I agree. I think they'll improve significantly, but I also don't think they're quite at the point of being a top 10 rushing team.
Obviously, as the Najee Harris owner, I want them to be a top 10 rushing team.
Yeah. Well, you're a little biased.
I'm extremely biased, and I'll wear that
Yeah.
bias. I'll wear that bias and say yes, they're a top 10 rushing team.
Yeah. All right. Keep trade cut. Zach Moss, Jarvis Landry, Mike Davis.
Keep Jarvis, trade Mike Davis, cut. What was the first one's name?
Zach Moss?
Yeah, cut Zach Moss.
Okay.
I'm gonna need those names again.
Zach Moss,
Uh-huh.
Jarvis Landry, Mike Davis.
I'm gonna keep Jarvis Landry. I'm gonna cut Zach Moss.
Okay.
So you're doing the same thing as me.
I guess so, yeah.
I would keep Jarvis Landry. I would trade Zach Moss, and I would cut Mike Davis. I like Zach Moss. He's got good upside. I don't think he's in an ideal situation right now, but
I kind of flipped a coin on that one, if I'm being honest.
yeah.
I don't like the Bills' run game at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Fair enough.
All right, true false. Here's the last one. Derek Carr is a top 20 fantasy quarterback in 2021.
Top 20?
Yes.
I think he's a top 20 quarterback. I don't think he's a top 20 fantasy quarterback.
Okay.
I think he is, only because I think there's going to be several teams that either flip-flop quarterbacks mid-season, allowing him to have
Jump up without doing anything different.
Exactly, just based purely on consistency of numbers. So
Yep.
I'm going to say yes, but he's not going to play like it.
Yeah, I think he's a fringe top 20 fantasy quarterback. I could see him being, 17th just as easy as he could be 23rd.
I'll say this:
And,
last year he was 14.
Yeah.
That I pulled that up while we were discussing it,
Yep.
just to be like, where did he
Yeah.
finish? I mean, I just wanted to see his numbers, I guess, last year and
Yep.
that, but he finished last year at 14. So I don't think there's that massive a drop off from him from last year to this year. So yeah, he's a top 20.
I guess
All right.
Deshaun Watson not playing is going to help him.
Yeah, that's one less name for him to leapfrog. I mean, what? Tyrod Taylor's not going to be a top 20 fantasy quarterback.
You take that back.
All right,
Yeah,
folks. that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Inside Handoff. I have been your host, Johnny V, for Zach, for Jeremy. You can catch us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Inside Handoff, or on Twitter at, what's the handle?
Handoff Inside.
At Handoff Inside. And if you're interested in being a voting member of the voting panel for our top 10 series, hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, and you too can be a voting member of our panel. First episode, top 10 coaches, with more to come. Keep an eye on our Facebook and Twitter as we announce more and more topics. So thank you very much. This has been episode 3. We'll see you next week.